Welcome everyone to another episode here at the Daily Report. I'm John Iadarola. Very exciting Thursday surprise for you. Abelina Sabrina returns to the show. Sabrina, how's it going?
Good morning. Happy holiday season, everybody.
We're happy to have you here. You are super holidayed out. When we take the full video view, people will see. How are the holidays treating you? It's been a bit since you've been on the show. What have you been up to?
I have been celebrating, not only Christmas, but especially Grinchmas this season. Officially started over at Universal. I have no connection to them, but I am excited to see the Grinch over there. So I'm having a good December. How about you?
I'm doing well. So we were talking about Universal actually before the show. Do you feel like, based on your experience with Disney, do you have conflicted feelings about your newfound love for Universal Studios?
You know what? I don't as much, because a lot of the character actors over there are union, as opposed to at Disneyland, the characters are not. So I know for a fact that the performers over at Universal are treated quite nicely.
That's awesome. I did not know that. I love that you know that. Well, yeah, the holidays I think are going pretty well. It's getting a little bit colder here in LA. I know, that's a joke to anyone who lives in a part of the country that actually gets cold, but I had to wear a jacket today, so that's something. And looking forward to decorating the house a little bit more. I got the tree up and stuff. I actually really like the holidays despite being a godless atheist. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Pretty good. And a little bit of fun news. So you know what? I think that that's about as much as we could hope for.
Yeah, and you know what? We even got a little bit of rain today, which, the rest of the country can laugh at us, but we don't normally get that over here. We normally get fire. So it's very welcomed.
Exactly. Well, we're gonna be talking about fire in just a little bit. I would love to see some snow here. That's probably not gonna happen. But anyway, I do miss it. I grew up in Connecticut. We will be talking about fire, if not snow. We will also be talking about the world, not just LA. We're gonna have Meanwhile in for you to close out the show, news from countries around the world. And we got a lot that we're gonna be talking about, silly and serious in that section. We're also gonna be showing you, I didn't do that. Sorry, it's the producer. We're gonna be showing you one of my favorite political ads in like years. So we're gonna have that for you. It's nothing but fun, I think, in a little bit. And along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great, so that people know we're live. And you can send us comments, tweets, super chats, and all that. We'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Sabrina, you ready to talk about some news?
Let's go.
Okay. You may not think that you could get milk from a tree, but Fox News has been milking this tree story for about 2 days now. Let's give a little bit of an update on what happened after someone, apparently an unhoused individual with what they are saying is a history of mental illness, burned down the Fox News Christmas tree. That may seem like an unfortunate but simple explanation. Well, that's not good enough for them. So here's more of what Fox and Friends is saying about this whole incident.
The cover of the New York Post, treason. Grinch sets fire to Fox's Yule display, and he is freed without bail despite a long rap sheet. And we know more about that guy right there, 49-year-old Craig Tamahana. After he was arraigned yesterday, he said, "I didn't do it." He denied the arson, then he hurled obscenities at the reporters before asking the reporters, "Hey, does anybody have a cigarette?"
Right, his family knows he's crazy. No judge could find a way to keep this guy locked up. It's unbelievable.
He wasn't eligible for the bail under these new liberal reform laws.
That's right.
But the judge could have found a way to keep him locked up if he felt as though he was a threat to society. Note to judge, he's a threat to society.
Well, here's the thing. In New York, under the new liberal policies of bail reform, arson is only a felony. You can only be held if it's a felony. If the suspect tries to harm a person or commits a hate crime. And apparently lighting a Christmas tree on fire is not a hate crime.
Okay, so it took, I don't know, less than one full day for them to move into, this isn't just unfortunate. This isn't just gonna be ammunition for our constant talks about the war on Christmas. No, it's actually a hate crime now, Sabrina, to burn down their Christmas tree.
So they are aware of what a hate crime is then.
Interesting. They've discovered it.
They've discovered it all of a sudden, because I think Tucker Carlson specifically didn't know what it is. He said he doesn't know how to define it, but it seems like Fox News knows how to define it very well. but only if it applies to an inanimate object like a Christmas tree.
Exactly, and despite the fact that this guy, they're saying he's crazy. That's the terminology Fox News is using. His family is saying he has mental health difficulties. They haven't been able to establish, and the police have apparently ruled out a political or ideological motive, let alone an anti-Christian motive. He seems like a guy that has issues and committed a property crime, and they're still doubling down on this is a crime against all of us, despite the fact that it's not my tree. It's literally just a tree. There's a tree outside. It's a tree for a corporation. It's not even technically a tree. It's like a holiday display. It's not real, by the way. Not that that would matter, but they really want it to be something bigger. Anyway, we have Colby Hall Media listed some of the things that they think right wingers believe in. Christianity is under attack. Big cities with Democratic mayors are lawless. And an opportunity for resilience in the face of adversity. This is sort of demonstrating all of that. And you'll note that they're using it to attack these like liberal bail laws. Have they ever gone off on conservative bail laws, like a person who commits some minor offense and can't afford the bail, so they stay in prison for a year waiting for their trial? Have they ever been aggrieved about those conservative bail laws? No, they wait until there's a little bit of reform and they can find one instance in which they think it's been improperly applied.
Yeah, they're just very much like waiting to feel like the victim in this situation, especially because like in situations where, for example, like there's an officer involved shooting, they don't have any trouble going along with like that headline. But if it's like a liberal media outlet saying, "Oh, tree caught on fire," they're like, "Oh, well, who caught that tree on fire? This is an arsonist," and they won't identify the actual person who did it. It's like, okay, so you are aware of how headlines work. Again, it's just a matter of your own narrative.
Exactly, yeah. They get that causality can be implied in a headline. And I agree, do it for both. Do it for when a cop shoots someone. It's not like bullet was discharged, cop nearby when it happened. But you're right, they don't generally mind that. And look, you pointed out the sort of weird, flexible relationship to the concept of hate crimes that Fox has had. It very much depends on the situation, whether something is obviously a hate crime, like in this case, that's not in any way obviously a hate crime, but they think it's convenient to say that it is, and other things that don't fit into political narratives that they like, they will deny that they're hate crimes, or even when it's very clear, they will manipulate what sort of hate crime it is. And so I want to take you back 6 years to the wake of the Charleston shooting. So a white male went into a black church and shot it up, killing a bunch of people, which definitely does seem like a hate crime and a fairly obvious instance of race-based violence. I mean, after all, he wanted to start a literal race war, but they weren't having it. So here's a little bit of video from Fox News from back after that incident.
We're urging people, wait for the facts, don't jump to conclusions. But I have to tell you, I'm deeply concerned that this gunman chose to go into a church, because there does seem to be a rising hostility against Christians across this country because of our biblical views. And I just think it's something that we have to be aware of and not create an atmosphere in which people take out their violent intentions against Christians. And I would mention one other thing very quickly, and that is I would urge pastors and men in these churches to prepare to defend themselves. It's sad, but I think that we've got to arm ourselves, at least have some people in the church who are prepared to defend the church when women and children are attacked.
It was released earlier, and extraordinarily, they called it a hate crime. And some look at it as, well, it's because it was a white guy, apparently, and a black church. But you made a great point just a moment ago about the hostility toward Christians. And it was a church, so maybe that's what they're talking about. They haven't explained it to us.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether most people jump to conclusions about race. I long for the day when we stop doing that in our country. But we don't know why he went into a church, but he didn't choose a bar. He didn't choose a basketball court. He chose a church, and we need to be looking at that very closely.
First of all, shooters like Dylan Roof have gone into bars and they've gone into basketball courts, and they do shootings like this literally everywhere. Maybe you can look into some of that, but Sabrina, what did you think about that? That being back from 2015?
Well, yeah, I think they know exactly what they are doing. They are aware of it. And so I'm just so confused as to why they wouldn't want to call it a hate crime, why that's even up to debate. And yet for a Christmas tree, they want to call it a hate crime when nobody was actually hurt by this. It's an object. It's a holiday thing. And plus the Christmas tree was not always a Christian symbol the way it is today. It originated from a pagan holiday. So you can't even say that there's so much history behind it either. So I'm just confused as to what they think a hate crime is, or just how they're using it.
I think you're right, and I think we could definitely dive into what they think it is. But I think more importantly, I don't think they care at all. Everything is contingent on what it can be used for. You're right. It was just a piece of property, literally for a corporation. It's not like some sweet old woman put her last life savings into a big Christmas display and someone burned it down. Insurance is just going to cover it, and it's a corporation's thing. Corporations are not worshipers of a particular religion. It's a corporate board, but it's convenient to them to label it as one. You can see him, Ducey, in that video, sort of trying to work it through. The guest, E.W. Jackson, is like, let's not jump to any conclusions. It's a white kid who went into a historically black church and shot a bunch of people. I think if you're ever allowed to jump to conclusions, it's a pretty good situation to start hopping in. But then Ducey's like, they call it a hate crime. Well, I mean, allegedly he's white, who knows? But it's also a church. Maybe that's what we mean. Who knows? Because even there, when he's in the middle of trying to divert, I think, justifiable fears about yet more racially discriminatory violence, actual hate crimes based on race. He's trying to turn it towards Christianity. He's also still trying to mock the idea that hate crimes are a thing. That sure, yes, it's also just a crime. You are killing people, but you are doing it to achieve a racially or religiously, some sort of ideologically motivated reason. That is exactly what Dylan Roof was doing. He's not alone in that, but he's a great example of it. And they did not care, because they do now about the tree, and maybe I'll get in trouble. They care more about that tree than the people who were killed in Charleston. That is indisputable. They certainly got worked up more about it.
Yeah, and then at one point he even asked himself, he's like, oh, why did they do a church? Well, actually, I'm not gonna dive into that. And then he started, to divert his message elsewhere. It's like, really? I think we all know why he went into a historically black church. Like I think he caught himself in that moment.
I think we can figure it out, yeah. And by the way, I'm also glad that you brought up Tucker Carlson, because I, like a lot of people, was a little bit frustrated. About a week ago, when he did like a whole monologue about how if you believe that hate crimes are a big deal, that they're becoming more common, if you think that a hate crime is even a thing, then you're probably a big dumb dolphin. He had this to say. Let's go to a little bit of the video.
First, they changed the definition of hate crime. Now, a hate crime, by the way, is that even a real category of crime? How is it different from a crime? But it is, apparently.
It's just his audience is just there for him to, in a slack-faced sort of way, say condescending things about incredibly common sense concepts. So is there a hate crime? Is it possible? But what does that even mean? Who knows? Well, I don't know, Tucker. You seem to think some things are hate crimes. He was talking about how the Fox News tree fire was an attack on Christianity.
He's very much like Michael Scott, like, well, I hated it. And that makes it a hate crime, apparently. But there is like differentiation between like what is a crime and what is a hate crime. It's a matter of intent, and it's a matter of the victim of the hate crime. So for him to pretend that he doesn't know is ridiculous.
Yeah, 100%. And he says there, attacking the tree was an attack on Christianity. What are you talking about? You just explained to me that it's just a crime. The motivation behind it doesn't matter. It's just a murder, or it's just a rape. It's just a burning down of a church. It's not actually representing anything. There's nothing especially bad about any of this, according to Tucker Carlson, until, of course, it's an attack on a Christmas tree. And that's when he can finally work himself up into having an issue with it. But again, this isn't about them giving us an idea of their values, which are different than ours, but consistent. That we think hate crimes are bad and they don't. No, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they think they're real, sometimes they don't. It's all contingent. When that guy drove his vehicle into a crowd just a couple of weeks ago, despite any evidence whatsoever that it was some sort of race-based thing, the fact that he wasn't white and the victims were, to them, made it obviously a hate crime against white people, and the right-wing media spent all of the time from the crime till today and probably off into the future talking about how it's insane that the media doesn't get that this is a hate crime against white people. There's no evidence of it. And he literally drove it into a random group of people. He could have no idea who he was potentially going to hurt when he chose to do that. But that's obviously a hate crime, whereas Dylan Roof going into a black church and killing black people, knowing that that's who he's killing, come on, you're a weirdo if you think that that's a hate crime or if that's something that we should actually care about.
Their poor viewership must be so confused as to like, wait a minute, do we support the idea of hate crimes existing or do we not? They must be so confused when they just get such conflicting information from, the #1 news source.
No, I look, you are saying that because you're a reasonable person, but no, I don't think that they experience much cognitive dissonance. I think that they are very much Winston Smith in the closing pages of 1984. 2 + 2 equals, I don't know, whatever it needs to right now, and I'm perfectly content with that. Anyway, let's move to another aspect on this. Anchor on CNN, Breonna Taylor, attacked Fox News for the very different response that they had to the property crime against their holiday display and the incident on January 6th. Take a look at that.
That unites us, that brings us together. It's about the Christmas spirit. It is about the holiday season. It's about Jesus. It's about Hanukkah. It is about everything that we stand for as a country, freedom and being able to worship the way that you want to worship. It makes me so mad.
No one can burn down the spirit of Christmas or destroy our resilience. A new tree is on the way.
They look at the lights, and today there are no lights because somebody burned down our Christmas tree.
I hope we put it back. I mean, I hope we put it back.
I hope we build it back bigger and better.
Why is burning Christmas trees not a hate crime, according to the DOJ?
So for someone to burn that down is just so disheartening and so sad.
It's going to mean something a little different because we lost our tree and we're going to have another tree.
We're going to build the tree. The tree will be back in no time. It is going to be beautiful and massive, and it is going to mean even more than it did before.
This is a serious incident. Obviously, it's incredibly scary to feel that your workplace is under attack, unless your workplace is the Capitol. Then, according to many, many Fox hosts, it's not such a big deal.
99% of them, 100%, 99% of them were peaceful.
You don't see people hiding bombs or using bayonets. You see people walking around and taking pictures. They don't look like terrorists, they look like tourists.
They were there to support the President of the United States and defend our republic and stand up and say, I just want a fair shake.
The insurrection at the US Capitol. It wasn't insurrection, it was a political protest that got completely out of control.
For best performance in an action role, the winner is Michael Fanone.
At Fox, when the target is a Christmas tree at their workplace, it is a sacrilege.
Exactly. Despite the fact that there were bombs planted, people brought guns and knives and shock prods and Molotov cocktails and all of that. You will never hear that on Fox News. It's inconvenient, so they just leave it out. But yeah, Sabrina, there was a little bit of a different response to those two different incidents.
Yeah, it was just a protest that got out of control. Just like the fire was just a little fire that got out of control on a tree. It's not even somebody's workplace. It's a tree, unless there's, I don't know, like a squirrel or a chipmunk living in that tree.
And then I would be angry.
And then I would be angry. And then PETA would be knocking down some doors. But no, yeah, it's always just going to be a matter of their own narrative. They're not as dumb as, some people would think they are. people who work over at Fox are actually kind of smart. But the thing is, they know what they're doing. They know what they're broadcasting to people. And so they downplay events like, the Capitol riots on January 6th, and then they hype up Christmas tree arson.
Yeah. Well, they know their audience. They're clever enough to be manipulative. They know that they have an ignorant audience that they want to keep ignorant. They want to feed them what they want to hear and never expose them to things that would make them uncomfortable. Because if they do, those people will just go watch OAN or Newsmax or whatever. There's just a race to the bottom of never once making the viewer uncomfortable about anything. And that is why everything it flip-flops, it's wishy-washy, it's whatever it needs to be. I stupidly believe in actual standards. And so, by the way, let me close this by saying, in terms of like when Tucker Carlson there was like, how is it not a hate crime according to the DOJ? Here, it could be. I believe burning down a Christmas tree could be a hate crime if you could demonstrate that it was motivated by hatred of Christianity, or perhaps designed to terrorize Christians. If they found that homeless man had a manifesto or had ranted on Facebook about how I'm gonna stick it to those Christians, then yes, this would be a hate crime, but we need the actual evidence. Tucker Carlson is not interested in that. He's not interested in the evidence that goes into actual hate crimes. He doesn't care about what Dylan Roof said or did before he started murdering people. They're not interested in that at all, or what the Crumbleys have said politically or anything like that. So they're not interested when the evidence is there, and they're not interested in finding the evidence in cases like this. It's just too convenient to say it's a hate crime when it actually could be, but that has not yet been demonstrated. Any final thoughts, Sabrina?
No, I think it's interesting that the way that they even portrayed the person who, they think that lit the tree on fire, they portrayed him as just like a crazy person, when in fact, like, he is an unhoused person and maybe he does have, some mental issues going on, but that wasn't the focus about like helping the unhoused or helping people who have mental issues at all. It was about like this crazy person. So it seemed like they were trying to associate crazy, just kind of generic word, with, our enemy, the left, and they're lighting our tree on fire as if it's all one and the same. And I think that's really dangerous for them to put out. But also it just goes to show that if anything, there's even less intent of it to be a hate crime if they're going to try to paint in that way.
Yeah, you would think, but again, the audience is just like, yeah, sure. Like it was a totally random homeless person, and then also it's proof of a war on Christmas, and they're continually told to hate and fear unhoused people, but also to not believe that anything should ever be done to lower the number of them or give them access to care for their mental health or anything. I'm a stupid lefty, so I think when we identify problems, we should actually solve them. They just want to keep having the issue. I don't understand why. I understand why it's being pushed by Fox News, but I don't know why the viewers would be okay with this. Anyway, with that, we're gonna go to our first break. When we come back, we're gonna be talking about the Supreme Court. Biden assured us he's gonna look into potential reform. Well, we're a little bit closer to probably huge reform, probably. We'll find out after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what you all have been talking about. Louis Belmont Show sent in a super chat saying, did you guys hear about Jeff Hardy? He was released from WWE for refusing to take them up on an offer to enter rehab for alcoholism. I had seen a tweet about the fact that he was let go. I don't actively watch the WWE anymore, but Jeff Hardy was a wrestler way back when I was watching it. It's amazing. Generally, their careers don't last this long, but we know that there's a lot of addiction issues in professional wrestling, and it doesn't seem like, at the very least, the WWE has ever really taken it seriously. In this case, it looks like they were trying to help him, but you look at some of these people that have wrestled for long periods of time, and there's a lot of really bad endings to those stories. Billy Barracuda Dragon said, and I think this is about the background in your shot, says, Sabrina, did you model for a Target ad? It does kind of look a little bit Target-y in your background.
I mean, if Target wants to, make a commercial together, sure, let's go.
Let's do that. Let's see. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says, Sabrina, you're always welcome here. Well, that's very nice of you, Bernie the Kiwi Dragon. Thank you. Let's see. Progressive Chihuahua says, I love that name. John and Sabrina just burned Fox News with those clips of their hypocrisy worse than their tree, or at least as badly.
Bird, baby
the
bird.
difference is our clips are real. That isn't actually a tree. Also, trees aren't real. That is a conspiracy theory. Did you know that? There are people who believe that trees aren't real. Stephen Early, thank you for your super chat, much appreciated. Huey says, reminded every day we're in the bad timeline, certainly one of the bad ones. Machiavelli Outlaw in the Twitch chat says, Sabrina, you're a special bright light in the darkness. Thank you for being you. That's nice.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
So nice. Mother of Woman Dragon gifted a tier 1 sub over on Twitch. Thank you as always. The Crow hit 12 months as a subscriber. Thank you. Bookworm Dragon hit 18 months. So many people getting towards the big 2-0. Let's see. Oh no, Just Freaking Otega says, so on top of just losing a MAGA cousin to COVID, woke up this morning to sister-in-law and 4 kids all tested positive. Cousin is in Kentucky, sis and kids in Missouri. Y'all, S is hitting the fan in a big way. Yeah, I don't know, Sabrina, if you saw it, but cases and deaths are once again going up. Just like they did last year around this time.
Well, it makes sense. Like it's winter, it's colder, it's flu season. So more people are just like coughing and sneezing in general. So it makes sense. Like if a person has COVID, that will also be more easily transmitted and people don't survive as much during this time. So please take extra care of yourselves, everybody. Get your booster, get your vaccines, get them.
Yeah.
Be safe.
100%. You can just get it when you get your flu shot. Or are people not getting flu shots anymore because of the whole anti-vax thing? I'm worried. I bet there's gonna be more flu than in past years. I bet last year there probably was. I need to look into that.
There have been times where like I went to go get, I would go to like a doctor's appointment and they asked me if I want to get my flu shot, but maybe I have something that day and I'll be like, oh, not at this moment, but I still plan on getting it. And they'll give you like a paper that says all the reasons you need to get your flu shot. And then you have to sign something that says that you refused it. So I guess there are still people. So, but they're trying.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, for a long time, I didn't get flu shots because I was stupid, that's all. And not because I believed they were bad for you. I just never really thought to. Probably got the flu a few times as a result of that. Don't be me. Anyway, let's see. The Dungeon Dadster says, Sabrina, how's that movie coming along? You working on a movie?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm filming a rom-com.
Well, hold on.
It's gonna come out.
Okay, that is awesome, and I want to hear more. We're down to just a couple seconds later in this break, but in the next break, I want to hear all the details about that. Okay, more news coming for you right after this. I'm excited now. I didn't know about this. Okay, but with that, let's move into some serious news. A long time ago, Joe Biden, freshly inaugurated, told us, I hear your concerns about the Supreme Court and how insane everything has become. We're gonna look into it. And so they set up a commission and months and months and months and months have passed, but now their report is here. It's a 36-member bipartisan commission. It was not charged with doing research and then saying, here's what Biden or the Democrats should do, but just looking into possible reforms. And so they looked into a lot of different changes that could in theory be made to the Supreme Court. And just on Tuesday, they submitted their final report. They said they described public support for imposing term limits. They do think people would like that, but there's profound disagreement about the concept of adding justices. Well, let's give you more details about what they found. They said the commission takes no position on the validity or strength of arguments for or against increasing the number of justices. So again, this is not a commission report where it's like, here's what needs to be done. Because even if it was, Biden probably wouldn't do anything, but now there's not even any pressure on him. But that said, among the proposals the commission considered are term limits for justices who currently have life tenure and often serve for decades. Until the 1960s, so about a half century ago, the average term was 15 years. Now it's increased to about 26 years. Clarence Thomas, by the way, has been there for 30 years. And this is back when they sort of still looked for reputable, quote unquote, judges that have experience, that have served for a number of years. Now they're taking like some douchebag, like fresh out of law school and throwing him on the Supreme Court so he'll be there until we're living on Mars. They're putting younger and younger ideologues there. And so this problem is only going to get worse. And so we're gonna get into more of this, but Sabrina, what do you think about some of these concepts for reform, including the possible term limits that they're talking about here?
Yeah, I think term limits is a good start, but I mean, also, I think that it could also just become like a revolving door of just we keep getting these not as great people. I mean, look, the presidency has term limits. I do think that it's a good start, but I think that as of right now, when we have like 3 liberal justices and 6 conservatives, I think that we should look at expanding the court. So it's really disappointing to see that that doesn't seem like a reality that's going to happen anytime soon, because that will yield actual results. And I don't see that happening.
I mean, look, I'm going to be completely realistic. Maybe it's a spoiler. I don't think they're going to do literally anything. But of the things that in theory they could do, I think, look, I've thought for a long time, there's people have been talking about setting up some sort of term limits for a long time. There was a great episode of John Oliver years ago about this. And the idea is that in theory, I think we have a little bit of a description of one of these plans. Perhaps we don't. But the idea would be you could set up a system wherein each presidency, each 4-year term of the presidency would have 2 appointments to the Supreme Court, so that you have a natural, predictable evolution of the court over time. And you know that if the Supreme Court is really biased against you, liberal or conservative, I mean, it's only hypothetical that it could ever be liberal because it never has been, then you can win the presidency a couple of times and you can change things. Instead, now you have no idea what's gonna happen when a new president comes in. They could get no Supreme Court justices, they could get 3 like Donald Trump. And because they're lifetime appointments, it is incredibly important because you can put people on there for literally decades. I think making it sort of a standard thing where the president gets 2 would make us lose our mind a little bit less about the uncertainty over it. And it makes these huge potential shifts in the Supreme Court. I don't think that it's necessarily good for an advanced democracy to have so much uncertainty and to sort of seemingly randomly assign huge amounts of power over the Supreme Court, remaking it, or not at all. Also, by the way, keeping the system we have right now means that you always have this concern over opportunistic retirements of Supreme Court justices. Will they happen to die at a particular time? If they're close to death, then should we try to sneak them out the door while we have our party and control the presidency? Whereas otherwise they could stay for 18 years or whatever. And then when their term is up, they move on. We don't have to worry about them potentially dying in office and totally manipulating the whole thing.
Yeah, I think even 18 years is quite a bit of time. A lot can change. That's basically like somebody being born to becoming like a full-fledged adult. I think if term limits, I don't know if it's actually gonna happen, but if it does happen, even 18 years seems like quite a bit of time. Maybe like a nice solid 10 or something. But I like your idea of having like whoever is president, maybe they get like two options up there. But I really think that like expanding the court would make the biggest difference and actually yield results. But I don't think even Democrats like Biden are really interested in that.
No, look. Either of these are potential solutions to multiple problems. But we constantly talk about things that would help to solve a lot of injustices in America, whether it's removing gerrymandering, stopping voter suppression, getting rid of the filibuster. All of these things are things that are both, I believe, objectively and morally the right thing to do in a democracy where you want people to have some sort of influence over political outcomes. And also, if you didn't care about any of that and you were just like a partisan pragmatist, it would be good for your side to unrig the system a little bit, but neither of those things ever seem to get through to them. The Democrats aren't willing to do the things that would not only make good on their promises, that would not only make the system more representative, but would also benefit themselves. They don't do that. They're sitting with a slim majority in the Senate, unwilling to make a change that would allow them to actually pass things in the Senate.
And that's the thing. I don't know how much they actually want to make good on their promises. Like people are getting those emails about student loan debt payments resuming in the next year, and that's a really big promise that people were looking forward to. So I don't think that they actually want to make good on these promises. Even like you said, they do have a slight majority. Yeah, disappointing.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I mean, look, I don't think there's not gonna be a real strong impetus for them to accomplish things so long as the people that are funding their campaigns are doing just fine. Rich people aren't desperate, so they're not pushing for big solutions to problems. There is this huge disconnect there that encapsulates 100% of the Republican Party. Not a single one of them wants to actually deal with a real problem because none of them are actually funded by real people who want problems to be solved. And 97% of the Democrats are the same. The Democrats at least know that they need to make policy-based promises to get elected. The Republicans don't have to do that, and they've totally dispensed with the idea of even having a platform. But then once they get in office, they can deliver what they need to deliver, which is just stopping much from happening. If you were in a great position socially and economically, you too might be fine with not much getting done. But it is frustrating for those of us who believe that these problems need to be solved.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree. I don't think that much is going to happen. Jen Psaki said on Monday, there's no time frame for when Biden will review the report. Literally just review it, let alone do something based off of it. And what are the chances that they would? I mean, come on, who's a leader on the Democratic side that's going to make some sort of big change to the Supreme Court? Even though, again, historically, it has been changed many times, the Supreme Court. It didn't always have the same number of justices, for instance. Now with that, why don't we move into something very different? We're gonna jump right into this video.
Kayla, you really should be doing this whole segment yourself. I mean, you live this, you have it. It's all in your book too, to chronicle it. And going over your book, it reminded me too. I mean, if President Trump fell asleep in a Paris climate meeting or a climate meeting in Glasgow, do you think they'd forget about it, especially when he built this whole administration around that meeting? What about the Iranian deal, the way we're begging to get in? We're just not even reporting that question. Crime and inflation are fundamental things that they don't even report. If you look at the other channels, it's 45 minutes an hour on January 6th. That's all they got. Mark Meadows, what's going to happen? January 6th, that's all they got. And it's comical that Dana Milbank expects to sell us that crap that he wrote, that Trump gets worse coverage. Are you kidding? There was the respect for 4 years.
Exactly. It's a great point.
That's good to see her happy. So what is Kilmeade losing his mind over there? Well, Dana Milbank of the Washington Post did an analysis of press coverage of the first part of the first year of Biden's presidency and the coverage last year of Donald Trump, and found, first of all, Kilmeade wasn't even saying accurately what's in it, that the coverage of Biden during a portion of the year was actually more negative than the coverage of Trump during the pandemic. So he's frustrated by that, Kilmeade, because he believes Biden falling asleep at a meeting or whatever should merit more negative coverage than Donald Trump telling you to inject a light up your bum or start drinking bleach or whatever. And so that's a weird position to take. We'll give you the details on the actual study, but overall, Sabrina, what do you think about this? The frustration that the coverage of Biden hasn't been negative enough so far this year.
This year, I mean, I remember in the beginning, Biden did have, lots of like positive and some negative coverage, especially like on the right wing outlets, but even on like more left wing, like I think that they were pretty critical of Biden and rightfully so. And for Trump, considering he's not even president anymore, they still talk about him. So at the very least, they're keeping him alive in a certain way.
Yeah, and it's just, look, as Sabrina's saying, there was a lot of negative coverage of Biden. Now, negative coverage can be many different things. It can be totally shallow, like he fell asleep at the meeting. Why aren't you guys talking about this anymore? Or we could be pointing out that he multiple times made very specific promises about canceling student loan debt, and he hasn't yet done it. Those are both criticisms and negative coverage. One actually has to do with working people's lives. And so even there where he's calling for more negative coverage, he can't think of a good thing to bring up. He was talking about like rising crime or whatever. Like, okay, as a contextual thing, but why don't we talk about things directly Biden is responsible for that he's either done wrong or hasn't done? But he works in the media, so he has no idea how criticism is actually supposed to work. As Sabrina pointed out, initially, the coverage of Biden was more positive, and I want to demonstrate that. So let's jump into what Dana Milbank was talking about in the Washington Post. So the information company Fiscal Note used a tool called Forge.ai to look through more than 200,000 articles from 65 different news websites and did what they call a sentiment analysis of coverage. They looked for keywords to see whether the coverage was positive, negative, neutral, or mixed. And they found that, well, why don't we jump ahead to the chart? And you'll see that for the first period of the year, the coverage of Biden was more positive, and then it dropped like a rock below the levels for Donald Trump. And Dana Milbank wants to remind you of much of what we covered last year. If you don't remember what was happening with Donald Trump, he presided over a worst in world pandemic response that caused hundreds of thousands of unnecessary deaths, held a super spreader event at the White House and got COVID-19 himself, praised QAnon, embraced violent white supremacists, waged a racist campaign against Black Lives Matter demonstrators, attempted to discredit mail-in voting, refused to accept his defeat in a free and fair election, leading eventually to the violence of January 6th and causing tens of millions to accept the big lie, the worst of more than 30,000 he told in office, and all of the other stuff that happened last year. It was a debacle, even for Trump in comparison to his previous years. He didn't do anything good. But Biden, like the stuff they're criticizing him for isn't super substantive even, but they're finding ways to make it more critical of Biden than that year for Donald Trump. Sabrina, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think initially, when he got elected to presidency, Biden did have, that really favorable coverage because, you kind of have to, throw your support behind the winning horse, or at least the honeymoon period. Exactly. And I do think that it's fair for people, now that he's been president for like almost a year, it is very valid for people to critique, like, did he follow up on his promises, like student loan forgiveness, or, his actions like at the border with like migrant families and whatnot. And they find that not a lot of the stuff changed regarding like some of his promises. And so I think it is very fair to criticize him. And I think that's why, they kind of see that drop on the graph. But I think that's a good thing. I think it is a good thing to be able to critique your president, as opposed to, when we had Trump in office, any critique of him was, met with like a lot of bat fire because it's like, oh, that's the president. But no, you should be able to critique the president in this way.
Yeah, and what doesn't get sort of like encapsulated in the sentiment analysis is the nature of the critique. And the thing is, like, what we're calling for, and what a lot of independent media has tried to do, what TYT has always done, is actual substantive critique regardless of party. And honestly, a lot of like independent media that's come up in the last few years, I don't think has been around for enough cycles to know that was something that TYT did. Like, sure, they started under Bush and were highly critical of Bush, especially in the war on privacy, launching all these foreign wars and things like that. The bulk of TYT was 8 years of critique of Obama. But again, Fox News spent 8 years critiquing Obama, so we're the same thing, right? No, they were talking about terrorist fist jabs and coffee salutes and tan suits and stuff like that. It's not substantive. And largely, despite the fact that you supposedly have two sides of the media, you've seen it in MSNBC and Fox News, you don't really get that ever, regardless of who's in office. Right now, you have Biden. And so CNN and MSNBC are included in this. They're being negative, but about stuff that isn't largely his fault or his responsibility. They're not really getting into the substance of his campaign promises because they have no more interest in student loan cancellation than the Biden administration does. And so regardless of what channel you're watching, you get the most shallow, controlled version of a substantive critique of the politicians of either party. And it does a massive disservice to people who should be able to expect more out of politics. And based on the politicians we have, as well as the media we have, just can't actually do that.
No, I totally agree. And honestly, I started watching TYT myself as a viewer back when Obama was president. And I did appreciate your very valid critiques on him during then. And obviously since then as well. So I am a big fan of TYT, not just when I'm on it.
I think they're okay. No, it's always best when you're on. It's one of my favorite networks, maybe top 10. Anyway, thank you for that. And we've got a lot more that we're gonna be talking about. We do have to take our second break, but when we come back, we're Ron DeSantis, just a complete coward when it comes to some of the most important political topics of our day. We'll be breaking that down for you after this. Okay, so wait, first of all, before we jump back into the comments, so what's going on with this movie?
I can't give away too many details, but I am filming a rom-com that will we'll finish the project with this upcoming year. And yeah, it's going to be an actual movie that I am starring in.
I can't wait to see that. Okay, well, if you ever get to the point where you can tell us like the log line or something, I'd love to have more information.
Next month.
Okay. Next month. Okay, well, I'm excited for that. That'll be a nice little treat in the new year. Okay, let's see. Progressive Canuck, aka Maple Syrup Dragon, says breaking news: Canada just made conversion therapy illegal. That's interesting. I had not seen that. Consider that an early preview from Meanwhile In. Okay, we're gonna have to look into that. Thank you. Jennifer McIntosh says my 8-year-old daughter wants to claim the name of Rainbow Sparkle Dragon. I love that. It's hers. Tim, aka a Diabolical Dragon, says Sabrina the Christmas Lefty Witch.
I'll take that name. That's like not bad. I'll take it. Accurate. Yeah.
Alan Addison says several judges cover multiple districts. Take it up so there is a 1-to-1. Well, if you're talking about like lower levels of the judiciary, sure, yeah. Tree Frog says the Dems will only propose making changes to the Supreme Court or filibuster after the midterms when they no longer hold Congress. Musically Meg says build back better, our tree, not the country. It's true. Yeah, they're so like, they say that conservatives are ignored and forgotten, they're suffering. They're talking about their burned down tree. Talk about your viewers' wages. How about that? Anyway, April over on Twitch, subscribe for the 4th month. Thank you for that, April. Galfar says Supreme Court should be 1 new judge appointed in each presidential term. Senate should have a 2-term limit. House of Reps should have a 6-term limit. President stays at 2 terms, and these are total. The terms do not need to be consecutive. Some of those are interesting. Look, I think for the Supreme Court, it's so much more consequential, I think, than even the Senate where you have 100 different spots. Like, I Am Sock says, I just figured out the next culture war battle. Santa wears a mask. Is that gonna be part of the imagery? I do wonder. That could be a way to get through to kids, maybe. Paige Lars says, I feel like the 3 liberal Supreme Court justices probably feel in a rough situation. If they retire, chances of getting another or even more liberal justice would be slim to none. But at the same time, I don't think they want to be like RGB. Yeah, I don't know. Breyer could retire right now. Like they're just because they're better than the right wingers, don't believe that they're like objectively good. They only have our interest at heart. They have their stupid legacy at heart and that sort of thing. Well, the legacy potentially is having some right-wing troglodyte take your spot. So I guess you'll be dead at that point. Maybe you won't care, but it'll bother those of us who still have to suffer with it. Let's see, Oddly Magical says, manipulation is easy when you're constantly fed a diet of xenophobia and victimhood. That's true. Of course, these people do choose to watch it, so some of the responsibility is still on them. Anyway, I want to remind you, by the way, that coming up after our program, Indisputable will be going live. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, joined by Senator Nina Turner, so that's very exciting. You're not going to want to miss that. Rashad will be having a debate with Andrew Donaldson. So some spicy content coming up on Indisputable right there. If you're watching on Twitch, you can just stay watching and it'll be coming up not long after our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/indisputable_TYT to watch the full program, which will be coming up right after the damage report. Okay, we got more for you after this. Okay, with that, let's jump into some more news. Ron DeSantis had a press conference where he was announcing some of the proposals for what he was going to do to help Florida deal with the fact that the ocean is rising and it's going to be flooding a lot of their state. He was asked at that press conference about what they would do to actually stop the root causes of climate change. And he didn't answer the reporter's question about that, about what his administration would do, if anything. Him and the 2 environmental advisors that he brought to the event never used the words climate change. So at an event talking about here, okay, so the water's gonna be coming over there. We gotta put up a wall, and then we have to reinforce this, and oh my God, we need some levees because we're about to flood. The ocean is coming. They wouldn't even acknowledge why the ocean is rising, why they're more at risk of flooding than they were. So he's trying to be like, I'm building things and I'm being responsible and all that, but he wouldn't even acknowledge what the actual problem is. And then, like, on top of the cowardice of that, of not even being able to, in the most indisputable state in the country, Florida, when it comes to the negative effects of climate change, he also tried to deflect a little bit of pathetic jujitsu, saying, what I've found is people, when they start talking about things like global warming, they typically use that as a pretext to do a bunch of left-wing things that they would want to do anyways. We're not doing any left-wing stuff. And some people cheered. Some of those people will probably end up drowning someday, but for now, they're cheering. What do you think?
That's so funny that he says that it would result in people wanting to do left-wing stuff because climate change is an issue that, historically the left has cared about for the longest time. So that's so funny that what he doesn't even go on to continue what left-wing stuff entails. Is it doing things that will help flood-prone areas like Florida? Is it addressing climate change? Like,
I don't know.
The fact that he's trying so hard to skirt around saying, and he did it successfully. And you know what? Honestly, if that's what it takes to get him to act, then fine. Honestly, if this is what it's gonna take, if he's gonna be able to just block out the words climate change, if it's gonna actually help his people, then fine. It's better than him denying it afterwards, at least in this case.
Well, I mean, you're right, and you're trying to be very fair. I mean, he's still largely denying the problem, but he does, like, once the water's lapping at your ankles, you can't at least deny some of the effects of it, I suppose. And so he says, be very careful of people trying to smuggle in their ideology. Yeah, he'd never do that. They say they support our coastline, or they say they support, some, difference, our water, environment, and maybe they do. But they're also trying to do a lot of other things. And again, he doesn't say what. He says we're a low-lying state, we're a storm-prone state, and we're a flood-prone state. And that is only going to get more and more true as the years go on. And a lot of cowardice and inaction of state level and federal politicians over a number of decades have put us on the path that we're on. And so when things get really bad and Miami is underwater and Manhattan is flooding and all that, there's gonna be a lot of guilt to go around, but some of it at a critical point is deservedly going to be able to be put on Ron DeSantis.
Like, I'm appreciating that he's at the very least asking for like about $1 billion to put towards this. I don't think that's gonna be enough. And I think climate experts in the area are estimating like that is a very low target to be aiming for $1 billion. Because one, who knows if he's even gonna get the full $1 billion. But in regards to like Florida's like weather, and they are very flood and storm prone, it's not gonna be enough for them, but it's a start. It's not enough.
Yeah, and it's at best a stopgap solution to one of the effects. It'll stop a little bit of the immediate flooding, not the increase in severe hurricanes, let alone all of the other issues. And eventually, even those walls will be overtopped and will require ongoing, incredibly expensive maintenance. What if we just solve the problem instead? What if we don't pull a Westeros and just try to build a wall around the entire thing? What if we actually solve the problem, Ron DeSantis? But again, he's not a leader. He's technically their leader, but he is not willing to actually lead. Not if it means acknowledging something that'll stop him from ever becoming a Republican nominee for president. Okay, with that, we are running very low on time. I wanted to make sure that we got to this, so let's jump into it. Sorry to the director, I know that was fast. A number of different organizations in California, as well as Gavin Newsom, have announced early plans to be, if necessary, and it's looking like it will be necessary, a bit of an abortion sanctuary in America for people living in states that will have their reproductive rights stripped away by right-wingers and the Supreme Court. Gavin Newsom told the AP that he plans to make room in his budget proposal this coming January for some of the suggestions brought forth by the California Future of Abortion Council. This is a group he started that comprises over 40 abortion providers and advocacy organizations. It recently published a list of 45 recommendations that would help make abortion care readily available in California, with additional provisions for a scenario where Roe v. Wade is overturned. Things like increased funding for abortion providers and dozens of other measures to make it easier for clients to access abortion services and providers to get paid. And by the way, not just for the people who already live here, not just for those who come from other states, but the increase in numbers of those people that will come. The California Future of Abortion Council put out a statement saying if Roe v. Wade is overturned or gutted, as most legal observers anticipate, 26 states are certain or likely to ban abortion, increasing the number of out-of-state patients who would find their nearest clinic in California from 46,000 to 1.4 million, a nearly 3,000% increase. And so, yeah, it's already a thing where people are coming to California, but it is going to massively rise if they do what it's likely that they're going to do, Sabrina, in the Supreme Court.
I think that is an excellent idea because, yeah, some states are probably going to outlaw abortions if Roe v. Wade gets overturned. So I do think that it's a good idea. In California, it's still not the easiest. I mean, like there are a lot of like Planned Parenthoods in the area, for example, and those are typically the go-to clinics for abortions. But it is still, you still have to go through quite a few hoops. Like for example, Planned Parenthood, they do not automatically pay for an abortion for you. It costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I hope that in this proposal that Gavin Newsom is recommending, that it would also entail financial care for people who come to California and seek abortion care.
Yeah, I wonder. We're gonna have to see. I mean, with the numbers that they're talking about, I mean, God only knows if they're gonna be willing to do that. And I'm glad. Look, I'm glad that they're doing this. This is good. This seems like a slam dunk. It's the most obvious thing that you should do in the world. But it's like bittersweet because like some states are gonna be responsible, and our national Democratic leadership is probably just gonna use this as a shield. Like, we stand with a woman's right and we're glad that other people are doing something. We're not gonna do anything. We're not gonna reform the filibuster to actually enshrine women's reproductive rights in a law. We're not gonna do anything to reform the Supreme Court. We're just gonna sit here, but we're glad in California they're taking it a little bit seriously. Good luck to those of you who live 1,000 miles away and would need to pay and take time off from work to go do this. Good luck to all of you who are economically unable to exercise your rights. So that's sort of my fear, Sabrina.
No, absolutely. Because even just traveling to California, not everybody will be able to take the time off work, find childcare if they already have other children or other responsibilities. Like even just timing and the financial responsibility of getting to California, not even mentioning the actual procedure or the aftercare involved. It's a lot more than just come to California, get an abortion. It's so much more complex than that.
100%, it is. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our first hour. Thank you everybody watching on our linear platforms. But if you're watching on Twitch or on YouTube, we not only have a lot more news for you, we also have international news. The return of an overstuffed Meanwhile in. We've got all that and more coming up after a quick, short little break. We'll be back in a few. Welcome back, one and all, to the show. Happy to have you here. Before we jump back into everything, let me read a few of your comments. Dragon Slayer Dragon, the member comment said, "Don't indoctrinate the kids, John Matthew Iadarola. That's Dennis Prager and Candace Owens' job with their Hitler Youth program." Jesus, that accelerated at the end. I am going to. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe if my book ends up being more of a kid thing, I can use it to subtly nudge kids towards socialism. So that's what I'm gonna hopefully work to do. I also want to remind you, by the way, we're gonna be speaking with Naomi Konst right after the show today. So she's the head of Matriarch, which we've been telling you about. On January 29th, they're gonna be holding a day-long digital training event to try to get working class progressive women who are interested in running for office prepared for everything they're gonna need to know and do in that process. They've been doing this for some time. And so on January 29th, they're gonna be doing this event. Right now, they're trying to raise money to pay for the ticket cost of as many women as possible. So they're trying to raise $30,000. You can go to Act Blue, Matriarch Movement is what you should search for to find that. And great organization, Nomi's awesome. We're gonna be talking about this effort a little bit later on. That'll be available probably sometime over the weekend. So look forward to that. And with that, Sabrina, you ready to talk some more news?
Let's go.
I got some fun stuff for you for this last half hour. Let's jump into it. A number of right-wingers are reacting with frustration, if not anger, at the results of a new study showing that Democrats largely don't want to sleep with them. So Axios has been spreading this. Let's take a look at the results. When asked, these are college students, who would you not blank? Someone who voted for the opposing presidential candidate, would they not go on a date with a Republican? Well, Democrats, 71% said they wouldn't date the other side, twice as much as Republicans. Shop at or support a business, significantly higher. 41% of Democrats wouldn't for a Republican, 7% of Republicans or vice versa. A significant chunk wouldn't even want to be friends with or work for someone of the other side. But the biggest number obviously is go out on a date with there. And we're gonna get to some of those reactions. They're not fans of this. Sabrina, what do you make of this, of the apparent growing distaste amongst college students for dating someone wearing a red cap?
I think that's really valid because that shows, who you vote for, I think, is a reflection of your core values, which are important to discuss when you're dating. It's going to come out eventually. So if that is, like a litmus test for who you're going to date, I think it's super valid. I certainly, like, if I'm talking to somebody, I want to know where they stand politically immediately if I don't already know. So I think it's really valid, and hats off to the students who participated this and who are very careful with who they go out with.
Yeah, if you were like, what would be more core to that decision? Like, what would be better able to inform than fundamentally who you are and what you support? And what you oppose. Like, if you want to strip away women's reproductive rights, or you believe that transgender people don't deserve any respect or dignity, like, if you believe these things, why the hell would anyone want to sleep with you? And who are you to say that that's wrong of them? Tut, tut. You should be fine with someone who wants to deny your entire existence and doesn't think you should be allowed to vote. But I don't even understand what the opposition to this would mean. Like, first of all, how would you change their minds? Being mad is just gonna make them double down. Other than maybe physical attractiveness, I don't think there's anything that more reasonably would inform the desire to go out on a date with someone than their political ideology, their values, what they think. And the fact, by the way, that the Republican number is lower, they're gonna spin that as them being more tolerant or whatever. I don't think it is. I think it just demonstrates that their political ideology and values don't really mean anything and aren't kind of core to what they are. Like, they talk constantly about cancel culture and they're coming for us and all this stuff, but apparently they don't really even care about that stuff because a potential partner not believing in any of it doesn't really bother them. And why should it? It's nonsense. Like, it doesn't have to do with people's actual lives. So I think this is maybe the most reasonable study I've ever seen.
Exactly. If their ideology is so limp, if it means that they'll get to wet their kibbles and bits, then I don't have that much faith in.
Don't bring dogs into this. Jesus.
Okay,
disgusting. Okay. There was other stuff, but you know what? I think we're gonna leave there. You get the basic idea. Yeah, like people like Ari Fleischer like tweeted, this is a former press secretary for George W. Bush. One of the best things about working at Capitol Hill was going out after work with friends. And I never cared what party they belonged to. It's terrible that those days seem over. Well, first of all, different Republican Party and different Democratic Party back in those days. Yeah, look, I have friends that don't agree with me on everything. I have friends who consider themselves to be conservatives, but there are definitely lines that I'm not gonna cross even with my friends. And I don't have conservative friends who fundamentally deny people's humanity and want to strip away their rights or their ability to actually be an active part of our democracy. Those are very reasonable places to draw hard lines, I think. And we don't even need to get our kibbles and bits involved. Any final thoughts?
It's easier to like draw those lines when it's like strangers, potential dates or friends or whatever. Like you don't have to associate them. I will say it's a lot harder when it's your family members, and that's why we have all like these funny like memes about like Thanksgiving and the holidays about like it's a lot harder to cut off family members if you are so ideologically far apart from each other. So when you do have the choice, like dating, yeah, sure, don't bother if it's gonna bother you like that.
I agree. Jade Snedden sent a super chat saying, "Lol, I'm talking to a Trumper that just got out of the military. I can fix him." You don't know. Well, or at least you got to use positive incentives until he tweets ACAB. No kibbles, no bits. How about that?
But you know what?
Reasonable.
Veterans, I feel like it is easier to radicalize veterans once they get out because they know how they were treated while they were over there. So you know what? I think you can fix him. Go at it. Go for it.
Exactly. Stoneflower Dragon says you can't spend all your time having sex. Eventually you have to make conversation. Why not both? And the MAGA person would ruin either. Anyway. With that, why don't we jump ahead to our next topic? We're gonna start off immediately with this absolutely nonsensical video.
It emasculated him. It changed him. It feminized him. It weakened him as a man. Do you think that's?
Well, I think he was very seriously ill.
Yo, for sure he was.
And I think, one of the things we have learned from COVID is people who are 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds overweight tend to have fared very badly.
Sure.
Now, we don't talk about it much.
But the virus itself, this is true, does tend to take away the life force in some people, I notice. I mean, it does feminize people. No one ever says that, but it's true.
So I'm joined on the program today by noted confirmed woman, Sabrina. How much COVID did you have to become the feminine woman that you are?
Well, if that's what it takes, COVID, I must have caught COVID so many times and not known it. That's so weird, and it's so funny that the person that Tucker Carlson is talking to is just like, yeah, I think they were seriously ill, but Tucker Carlson was just like, no, COVID is what feminized these men. Yeah. Like, what?
What part of like? So he's saying if COVID makes you sick and takes away your energy, that feminizes you, which is just, I mean, maybe we can skip past that. It's obviously incredibly misogynistic. It also is completely irrational. What part of being a woman means you're less energetic as a stereotype? I have had to cover a lot of misogynistic right-wing bullshit. I just swore, I apologize. I'm a little bit mad, we're gonna fix that. But what part of being low energy has to do with that? And honestly, what I wonder, Sabrina, is he's making a general case. Here he's talking about Boris Johnson, but he's also maligning anyone who has COVID. And one of the most notable men who had COVID and suffered through COVID was Donald Trump. Is he not even realizing that he's sort of implicitly saying that Trump has been feminized? Or is this, because this is a guy who might run against Trump in 2024. Is he like sort of like insulting him without specifically insulting him?
I wonder if he is, or if he's, no, I don't know. I don't know if he thinks that far back. I think he's really just kind of like talking in the moment with whatever is popping into his head. Yeah, because I think the whole thing that he's referencing is it the erectile dysfunction risk supposedly associated with COVID? Is that where he's getting that from? Yeah, look, there it is. So I wonder if that's That's the core of what he's talking about, and then he's just running with it. Yeah, I don't know if he realizes who he's offending.
I don't know. And again, look, the erectile dysfunction stuff, there have been multiple studies that seem to indicate, I don't consider that settled science or whatever, but if you are worried about that, first of all, try not to get COVID. And if you're gonna have COVID, if this is real, it's real because it is one of many long COVID symptoms. So do the best that you can to be as little affected by COVID as possible. Get the vaccine so you don't have a severe case. If you're irrationally worried about being feminized by disease, wouldn't you want to have the vaccine then? So this is not only like on its own merits, a crazy, irrational, misogynistic thing to say, but it's an even weirder thing to say when you're a guy who's been trying to get people sick with COVID for a solid year and a half. It's just bizarre at this point.
I guess Tucker Carlson is pro-vaccine now if he's anti-feminization through COVID.
Is vaccination masculine? I'm not saying anything. Tucker Carlson's just saying something. I don't know. Okay, with that, in a moment, we're going to move into our last segment of the day. I want to read a couple of your comments before that. Laurel P says, why would you date someone with completely opposite values unless that was your kink or something? I dated someone in grad school who we had very different values and it did not work. It's the only time in my life I've been told someone was breaking up with me because I'm an atheist. And those were her words. But honestly, fair enough. Like if you really believe whatever it is that you believe, and I don't, you could be offended by that, sure. Darcy Steele says, that's funny, I married a Trump supporter, not a rally-going one, but a supporter nonetheless. Politics aren't everything, it does cause fights at times though. And that's fair too, it's not the only thing, sure. Let's see, Noah says, love Nomi, so glad you're chatting with her. She would be a dope guest on TDR, the two of you would make a wonderful pair, I agree. She's been on before multiple times. Gilbert Wilcox says kibbles and bits now on Johnny's Candies on OnlyFans.
What?
No.
You have an OnlyFans?
No, not publicly. No. Anyway, with that, are we ready to do this?
Let's go.
Oh, Bajan, thank you for re-upping at 11 months at tier 2. Says, as a vet, I think it's easier to change our minds. We've already seen socialized medicine and just got 12 weeks of parental leave approved. It is a lot more of a socialist society than America, 100%. Okay, with that, let's do it. It's time for news from around the world. And meanwhile in Chile, is this the best political ad ever? I'll let you decide.
Gabriel Bori, el número uno, nuestro presidente compadre, eso compadre. Y las palmas arriba, hey, hey, hey. Te invitamos a votar, el uno debe marcar, solo por Bori debe votar. Te invitamos a votar, el uno debe marcar, solo por Bori debe votar. Por una pensión más digna y salud de calidad, por una pensión más digna y salud de calidad. No te olvides que el 19 por Bori debe votar. Te invitamos a votar, vamos todos a votar. El uno debe marcar, solo por Bori debe votar. Te invitamos a votar, vamos todos a votar. El uno debe marcar, solo por Bori debe votar.
I just came across that today. What'd you think?
I love it so much. I don't even know anything about that candidate, but it's literally just the way that like the pig was just like just
he had a hat. They stacked animals. That pig was getting into it. Or in honor of Chris Cuomo, that pig was getting after it.
What was I supposed to get from the ad? I
don't know. But whether you can say what it is that you get or not, I think you might agree with Mr. Onon, who says, I don't care what this person's political positions are. They have my vote. And I think a lot of people feel that way. So this is an ad for Gabriel Boric in Chile. And now you might be wondering, when was this ad released? is this definitely a real ad? I don't know. I did as much research as I could into this, and I just like it, so whatever. What I can say is that Boric in November 21st was the second place vote getter in the Chilean presidential election, and on December 19th will be going up in the runoff against Jose Antonio Cast, a conservative. And I tried to find out if this is one of the things where we're like incels in Chile making this about their version of Trump, and I don't believe that's the case. Boric apparently has spent 7 years as a congressman arguing for ideals expressed in the social explosion, promises to kill off the old model for good, so he's a reformer. He wants to do a major tax hike on major industries, ramp up public spending to overall services, and scrap the private pension system. And so he says if Chile was the cradle of neoliberalism, it will also be its grave. I don't know anything else specifically. Do not hold me to support for this person or whether the ad is even theirs, but it's awesome, Sabrina.
My interest is piqued, and I definitely want to learn more about him. I mean, if he's saying that this is the grave of neoliberalism, I hope he's coming from an even more leftist stance. Then, all right, I'm interested. I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah, and I want to know about the imagery. Like, why was the chicken so crazy? Alan Addison says, why was Brett in a Chilean political ad? That's a great point too. Anyway, just a good ad though. And meanwhile, in New Zealand, they might just ban cigarettes, like for everyone. They have this new plan unveiled earlier today to eventually ban all sales of cigarettes in the country, a decades-long effort unique in the world to prevent young people from taking up smoking. So they have a law. It would leave current smokers free to continue buying cigarettes, but it would gradually raise the smoking age year by year until it covers the entire population. Starting in 2023, anyone under age 15 would be barred for life from buying cigarettes. So for instance, in 2050, people 42 and older would still be able to buy tobacco products, but anyone younger would not. Now this is in addition to things like lowering the amount of nicotine in cigarettes, reducing where they can be bought, and raising their price. Right now, a pack of cigarettes costs a little over $20 US. So it is already very expensive. But Sabrina, they're just gonna literally ban it for everyone. What do you think?
Wow, I mean, from a health perspective, I think that's awesome. I wonder if in the meantime they're going to do that thing that other countries like Mexico have been doing where they put like the faces of dying people or like smokers' lungs on the package, so that way when you buy it you have to look at it.
I wonder.
Because I think that is slightly effective. It's working over there, I believe, but I'm surprised that they're outright banning cigarettes eventually, or at least that's the goal. I think people are going to be mad, but I think they're going to be mad and live a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm torn. Obviously, there are good effects, and I think that limiting where you can smoke and making them more expensive. I probably wouldn't go in this direction. There are already concerns about rises in smuggling, and apparently some evidence that they're already smuggling, considering how expensive the packs are. I think pushing people in the right direction can, in some cases, be better than outright bans, but it is bold. I'll give them that. And meanwhile, in the UAE, they're doing something good for workers in this economy. The Gulf nation is transitioning to a 4.5-day work week with weekends to consist of Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday. It would likely make the UAE the first nation to formalize a work week shorter than 5 days. And it also brings the country more in line with Western schedules, because up until now, the UAE has had a Friday and Saturday weekend, which is the standard in many predominantly Muslim countries for religious reasons. So they're going to be effectively taking away 1/2 day. And this is going to affect government workers and soon schools, and they believe the private industry will follow suit. First country in the world, not just to do tests, many countries have done that, but to actually institute it. What do you think, Sabrina?
I think it's a good start. I think the work week is way too long. I mean, even like the average 40 hours a week, like what time do you have left for sleep and your family or hobbies? Like I think it's way too long. So I think this is a good start. And I mean, to bring up like Mexico again, for example, it's not as bad in Mexico. Like there's definitely a more sense of like community because people will straight up have like a long break in the middle of the day to go home and eat with their families. Like stores will close for hours at a time in the middle of the day. So I think that's why they're able to maintain a 5-day work week over there, but it's a matter of hours. So I think it's a great step in the right direction. But even like Friday afternoon, I mean, why go in on Friday at all at that point? You're only going to be there for a little bit.
I say, look at Sabrina, always wanting more. It's not enough to get a half day. Look, it's a start. If it works, maybe it'll be spread. I want to see it in more places. Progressives in Congress this week actually are backing a bill for 4-day work week. No one expects that it's going to happen anytime soon. America despises its workers. We'll be the literal last in the world. But if that is going to be the case, let's at least get to the whole rest of the world as fast as possible. And meanwhile, Meanwhile, the world is about to get a black box. It's not technically black though. You can see a picture here of what the structure is going to look like, and so foreboding. The project is dubbed Earth's Black Box. It's a massive steel monolith that'll be built in a remote Tasmanian area. So what is this about? It's not just intended to look like it descended from the heavens. It's designed to be about the size of a city bus, made of 3-inch thick steel and topped with solar panels. And its interior is filled with basically hard drives that gather climate change related data such as atmospheric carbon dioxide levels and average temperatures. It also uses an algorithm to scour the web for tweets, posts, news, and headlines, which terrifies me. It's designed so that when humanity finally falls, because we're too stupid to save ourselves, they will be able to look back like with the black box on a plane and find out what exactly took us down. So that's dark. What do you think, Sabrina?
All right, I think that's a pretty good idea. Be careful what you post on the internet. It's gonna live forever in the black box.
Yeah.
But
some alien's gonna be like, oh my God, that's transphobic.
Oh no! But yeah, I mean, I don't see the problem with it. I think it's just a matter of like, who's deciding what gets saved, or is it just kind of everything on the internet gets saved in there? That's what I'm wondering, like how it works.
Yeah. Another issue with how it works is that apparently the storage drive data will only last for about 30 to 50 years. I think we're gonna have to get that a little bit up if we want the aliens to eventually see it. But I like the thinking, I like the idea, scientific community. I want us to be remembered after we've passed on. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for the show, Sabrina. Thank you as always for joining us. It's been great to get to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people see more of your work, by the way?
You can see me on youtube.com/Abelina Sabrina, as well as twitch.tv/Abelina Sabrina, where we do political news streams, and on YouTube we do sketches and political commentary.
Awesome, sounds like fun. Have a good one.
Bye.
And for those of you at home, we've got a lot coming up on the rest of the day, not only indisputable, but today being Thursday, reactions with Rayvanas coming up at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I'm gonna be speaking with Nomi Khan, so that'll be coming up on the channel very soon. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.